going to $700 billion off the sidelines. Name me a president in recent history that's gotten as much done as I have in the first 2 years.
When a Democrat says something racist or anti-Semitic, we hold Democrats accountable.
We're going to talk a lot about the Biden interview with Jake Tapper last night, considering he does so few. This is only his second sit-down interview with a real journalist since February. Also, KJP from the White House press briefing room, California's quote-unquote bullet train that's not really a train, or much less a bullet. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is October 12th, the year of our Lord 2022. Happy hump day, folks. Yesterday, Joe Biden gave an exclusive interview to CNN's Jake Tapper, and we got a lot of clips to play for you from that. Now, I'll start off with saying this. Did Joe Biden have some rambling moments? Yes, he did. But did he look like the crazy old rambling man that he sometimes does on stage? No, not really. He looked, again, not great. Obviously, he had some rambling moments, but not his worst. I guess trying to be a little bit charitable there. And of course, he said some things that don't really make sense in the grand scheme of betterment of America or really line up with the polling numbers that show that the president is doing, but we'll get to all of that. We've got a lot of clips to play, so we're just going to get started right away with it. This first clip, just to set you up here, is one of his rambly moments. See if you can catch where he goes off the rails in terms of quoting a dollar figure that may or may not exist. Watch this. First of many.
We passed look, what I ran on, I said we're going to deal with energy.
Right.
And the energy problem, we're going to deal with the whole notion of global warming. We passed $368 billion worth of help, which, as the same bankers talk about, is going to bring $1.7 trillion off the sidelines in investment.
A billion, trillion, 750 million, trillion, billion dollars off the sideline. Yeah, there's that. So a consistent theme here with Jake Tapper that I thought was interesting is Joe Biden, you saw it in the first clip and you'll see it later on, is continued to say, well, I ran on this. I would go out as far as to say that I don't think Joe Biden really ran on any of this sort of stuff. Remember, things have gone a little bit off the rails, but when he was running on this, I'm a moderate. I don't do any crazy Bernie Sanders type spending. I do, the normal American thing, and essentially ran against Donald Trump, obviously, but in the sense of that he only was, I'm not Donald Trump. That was his entire campaign thing. And, whether or not you like the current president's, I don't know, since his entire time in the Senate, he's obviously made several mistakes legislatively throughout that entire tenure and his tenure as vice president. But whether or not you agreed with him, I think a lot of Americans, when he was running, were like, he's not out there. And then he gets inaugurated and turns into Bernie Sanders and gets some crazy stuff through and has some crazy ideas. Now, who knows if those are actually his ideas and what he really has been thinking and harboring in his heart for the longest time, or he just has a bunch of woke staff members that tell him what he should say and decides to go with the wind, whatever direction they're blowing. So keep that in mind throughout these several clips. He kind of goes back to that saying, well, we did X, Y, Z, and yada, 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 yada. Check this out as we continue on with watching clips from Joe Biden's interview with Jake Tapper last night. Oh, also, by the way, if you wouldn't mind, would really, really appreciate you clicking the little like button down here and the little share button over there. Really, really does help us out. Or let us know in the comments section. Did you watch the interview on CNN last night? What are your thoughts? What do you think? Did Jake Tapper go too soft on him? I have thoughts, and we'll share that with you. But also, let us know in the comment section what you think. The clips roll on. Check it out.
Voters have been watching you. Democratic voters approve of the job you're doing. Democratic voters overwhelmingly like you. But one poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024. And the top reason they gave was your age. So what's your message to Democrats who like you, who like what you've done, but are concerned about your age and the demands of the job?
Well, they're concerned about whether or not I can get anything done. Look what I've gotten done. Name me a president in recent history that's gotten as much done as I have in the first 2 years. Not a joke. You may not like what I got done, but the vast majority of the American people do like what I got done. And so it's a matter of, can you do the job? And I believe I can do the job. I've been able to do the job. I've got more done. I got the Inflation Reduction. I got all these pieces of legislation passed. And I ran on that. I said this is what I was going to do.
Again, continue to go on the I ran on this. No, you didn't. You did not run on spending $5 trillion of extra money that we don't have on things that we don't need. But a couple of things to point out here that I think are kind of interesting and that we want to touch on continuing forward. Jake Tapper said that, well, a majority of Democrats want you to, or like you, yada, 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 but a third of them don't want you to run in 2024. Can we stop and pause at how not normal that is? The sitting president's own party, a third of them, 33% of Democrats don't want the sitting president from their own party to run. That is unheard of. Now, obviously, most Republicans don't want Joe Biden to run, or they do cynically because they think, oh, yeah, we can beat him with literally anyone, which they're probably right. But a third of your own party saying, we don't want you anymore, when you're the sitting president, is a big number. Then Joe Biden goes on and says, well, I've done more in the yada, yada, yada. I've done more in the first 2 years than anybody's ever done. I don't know what more means. I'm not going to sit there and quibble with the president's words of what does more mean. I tell you what, he has, if you want to look at it technically, spent more money than any president has spent in his first 2 years in office, I think. Not discounting or excluding people, I don't know, presidents in World War I. I think he said in recent history. So that's definitely true, and it's not a good thing. Then he says, I've gotten more done. You may not like what I've done, but a majority of Americans do. It's also not true. Just from a polling perspective, right? Joe Biden's approval rating is, 38, 39%, sits in the high 30s, maybe in the low 40s, which is historically low. So making the claim that he's gotten more done for the American people and the majority of people like it is a tough argument to make. That being said, if you listen to him, I watched this whole interview, and whatever shot in the butt, as Trump would say, they gave Joe Biden for the debates, they gave him here. He's, I guess, having a good day, which, if you want to play the I'm an American and a nonpartisan card, I don't really want the president of the United States being confused on national TV when the rest of the world can see, especially Vladimir Putin and especially Xi Jinping. So I don't know. That's just a thought that I had. Anyways, let's continue to roll on with this thing. We've got quite a bit more to go. Check it out.
Midterm elections are 4 weeks from today. The economy remains top of mind for voters. JP Morgan Chase CEO said the U.S. is likely to enter a recession in the next 9 months. Bank of America says the U.S. could start losing 175,000 jobs a month. Gas prices are on the rise again. Should the American people prepare for a recession?
No. Look, they've been saying this now. How every 6 months they say this. Every 6 months they look down the next 6 months and see what's going to happen. It hadn't happened yet. It hadn't. There's no guarantee that they're going to be. I don't think there will be a recession. If it is, it'll be a very slight recession. That is, we'll move down slightly. Look, think about what's happened. We have done more. We're in a better position than any other major country in the world, economically and politically. We still have real problems, but look what we got done. We passed so much legislation that significantly makes a point about, for example, the American Rescue Plan, the legislation to deal with inflation, the Inflation Act. We moved along. I mean, there's so much that's been accomplished that the idea that there's there's an automaticity to a recession is just not there. They've been predicting this off and on for the last.
But you just said that a slight recession is possible.
It is possible. Look, it's possible.
Oh boy, okay, a lot in there to break down and at least try to explain a little bit. First things first, the idea of a recession is when the GDP contracts for 2 consecutive quarters. That's already happened. So I don't know what Jake Tapper's doing. I don't know what the president is doing when they're saying, yeah, we probably won't see a recession. But technically speaking, we're in one. The historically agreed upon definition of what a recession is, again, 2 quarters consecutively of GDP shrinkage. We had those the last 2 quarters when the numbers came out, at least to my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong and completely misremember what happened like 6 weeks ago, but I don't think I am. Technically, we're already in a recession. So when Jake Tapper says, do you think we'll see a recession? The recession already walked by an open view of everyone and everything, and the president apparently missed it along with Jake Tapper. Len, what does he say? He goes into, this is another big thing that I think people, okay, just putting on my fairness hat here, this is another big thing that people making a lot of ado about. Watch this. I think it's right here. Maybe it's right here. I should have clipped this out more specifically. But Joe Biden drops his cards, and that is a shot heard around the world.
Look what we got done. We passed so much legislation that significantly makes a point about, for example.
Okay, so a lot of people are making comments about Joe Biden dropping his note cards. I'll tell you one thing. I do not care. I don't care at all that Joe Biden had note cards. In some ways, now there's people that are going to be making the argument, well, he's too old to be president, and that's understandable why anybody would be making that case. But at the same time, I don't mind people having note cards at all. I don't think that's. I think it's the president does so much, regardless of whether it's Donald Trump, Joe Biden, George Bush, Barack Obama. The president is dealing with so much all the time. I don't fault him or her for having note cards at handy. That being said, if you're Joe Biden, you should understand the optics and probably not have them in your hand. Maybe have them set up off screen, but even then, that's probably going to leak, and you never know who's going to leak that sort of thing and what the reaction is going to be. Bottom line here, that's a big story, I think, probably brewing up in conservative circles. I think on Twitter, I saw that video like 9 times of Joe Biden drops his note cards. Who carries note cards? That's a big nothing burger, I think. But at the same time, he says, well, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. I think it should be known, or is known, by pretty much everyone that the quote-unquote Inflation Reduction Act has no impact on inflation really whatsoever. And I thought that a lot of people already knew that. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's all that ubiquitous as I once would have thought. Let me make sure I get into the right spot here. All right, let me continue to roll on with this interview. Again, I don't agree with a lot of the policies, but at least the president didn't look like he was lost and confused, which, as an American, I think is a good thing, especially given the current climate around the geopolitical warring going on. All right, watch more of this.
CNN's reporting and the Washington Post reporting suggests the prosecutors think they have enough to charge your son Hunter for tax crimes and a false statement about a gun purchase. Personally and politically, how do you react to that?
Well, first of all, I'm proud of my son. And by the way, this thing about a gun, I didn't know anything about it, but turns out that when he made an application to purchase a gun, what happened was I guess you get asked, you get asked the question, are you on drugs, you use drugs? He said no. And he wrote about saying no in his book. So I have great confidence in my son.
All right, so he knew that question was coming, obviously, as you would. And honestly, I don't know how he answers it. Hunter Biden has put the president in a terrible position. Now, is President Biden probably complicit in some of the Hunter Biden dealings? I happen to believe so. You don't have to believe that. But in the court of public opinion, it would seem pretty clear that Joe Biden probably is, quote unquote, the big guy. Tony Bobolinsky, if you're following the Hunter Biden saga, was on Tucker earlier this week, I think. which is its own thing. As for this being, what is it? The FBI thinks they have enough material. We didn't talk about this at the beginning of the week because, again, the only thing I care about is whether or not it implicates or involves Joe Biden. If it doesn't, I don't care. The president's son is unfortunately has a lot of problems, and unless that affects the president, I don't really care at all. But yeah, I don't know how you answer that. I don't know if you answer it the way he did, trying to explain it away, or just kind of say, we'll let the courts take its toll. It's unfortunate that Hunter was addicted to various drugs throughout his life, and unfortunately, he may be continuing to see the outcome of those poor choices. I don't know. Maybe that's how I should have answered it. Anyways, back to this last question here before Jake Tapper wrapped it up. And before we wrap it up and move on, because we've been talking about this for far too long, let me know in the comment section what you think of this answer and question. Check it out.
One of the calculations that you think you're the only one who can beat Donald Trump?
I believe I can beat Donald Trump again.
Jake Tapper did not push him on that. He said, you're the only one that can beat Donald Trump? He said, I can beat Donald Trump. Okay, that's not the question that he asked. And as a politician does, Joe Biden skirted around that question. Jake Tapper did not push him on it. I think from an entertainment standpoint, Donald Trump, Joe Biden 2 would be one of the most popcorn-eating, entertainment value political races ever. I mean, the last two Donald Trump races were as entertaining as they get. I can only imagine the jabs being thrown, the Joe Bidens hiding in their basement, the Donald Trumps with arenas full of people, and then you look at the voting processes. Oh, entertainment-wise would be fantastic. The health of the country would probably be terrible. So there's that. I want to get to KJP's press briefing. What she said at the beginning, or not the beginning, at the beginning of these clips, what she said in this clip is, oh boy, you could talk, and I probably will ramble on this. Sorry. So if you're here, I feel like though there's a lot to break down in the very, very short little phrase that she said regarding holding her own party accountable. Check this out. This is fascinating. We'll discuss on the other side. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Watch it.
They should all step down. And here's the difference between Democrats and MAGA Republicans. When a Democrat says something racist or anti-Semitic, we hold them. We hold Democrats accountable. When a MAGA Republican says something racist or anti-Semitic, they are embraced by cheering crowds and become celebrated and sought after endorsements.
I think I could probably teach an entire college course on what she just said and how it fits into the political dynamic of our modern times. She was talking about that LA City Council person. If you don't live in California, you may not have heard of this. There's an LA City Council woman who said some pretty dang racist things, at least I think, in a recording, and has subsequently resigned her position. Now, where do we even start? So this whole idea of, well, Democrats obviously hold our own accountable. If Democrats are at fault and say anything racist or anti-Semitic, which I don't know why those are two different things. It doesn't really make any sense as why they would be. But she says that, so racist or anti-Semitic, then they are not held accountable if they're Republicans, but they are if they're Democrats. I think Rashida Tlaib 2 weeks ago, we brought it on this show, said that anybody who supports Israel is not a progressive. Israel is a Jewish state, and without going into the nitty-gritty details, Rashida Tlaib has also said some other very, very things that can be taken as anti-Semitic. So has Ilhan Omar. So has, I believe, AOC, either racist or anti-Semitic. And let's just go as far as to say the president. Here's the thing. Here's what I'm getting at here. It all depends on what you think is racist or anti-Semitic. I'm just going to say racist. I'm going to stop saying anti-Semitic because, again, in my world, being racist towards a specific race is racist regardless of whether or not it has its own name. So how about nobody judge people by the color of their skin? How about that? How about that for a conventional and brilliant Enlightenment idea? But the bottom line here is when people report, or when reporters and news outlets, if you notice this, when they report something that Republicans did, they state it as a fact. When they report something Democrats did, they state it as Republicans were upset by. Like, for example, if a Republican, let's just say, says something that's questionable, your news outlets will say, so-and-so says racist thing. Donald Trump says racist thing. Okay, flip it to the other side. Rashida Tlaib says something. The headline isn't going to be Congresswoman Tlaib says whatever she says. The headline will say Republicans upset at what they call Rashida Tlaib's racist comments. If it were consistent, I'd be all for the second part of that. If the entire media was consistent in saying, these people think what this person said is racist or not okay or unacceptable, I'm actually fine with that because like we see pretty much in every instance of this, the comments in question are very, very subjective of whether or not they are okay or out of bounds. That seems to be the case pretty much everywhere, so I would like it to be reported as, hey, Democrats got mad at Republicans because they said this, or vice versa. Republicans got mad at Democrats because they said this. Because this whole idea of speech and quote-unquote hate speech and all of that stuff is so in the eye of the beholder, it would appear that we should describe it as such and not blatantly dart to the side of this was this, as the media so often does. We can go on and on and on and on about that, but I want to make sure we get at least some time for this train thing. Here's one more crazy thing that KJP said during her press briefing. Watch this.
We have seen some important progress for the American people. A couple of things that I lay out. We've seen real disposable income and real consumer spending both increase in part thanks to the strength of our job market. Gas prices are down over $1 per gallon since their peak this summer. That's an overall decline of 22%.
Okay, so is your disposable income up, do you believe? Again, this is more of a subjective quote-unquote fact. What is it like in your household? Do you feel like you have more money to spend frivolously, or do you have less money to try and save as much as you can for the impending recession that we might see coming, according to Joe Biden, or already are in, according to everyone else? All right, I want to get to this. If you don't live in California, well, this is still a great example of what government gone amok could get you. California has this thing called the bullet train. It was a bill passed or a bond measure passed in 2008. It was a rail line that was supposed to be completed by 2020. The cost seems to be astronomically high at the time, $33 billion, but it was considered worthwhile as an alternative to the state's endless web of freeways and carbon emissions generated from one of the nation's busiest air corridors. Bottom line, Californians approved a bond measure that funded the bullet train. I think the bond measure funded $10 billion, and then the $33 billion that it would cost was supposed to be funded from elsewhere, of venture capitalists or people who, I don't know, thought that it would be worth their money to complete the train so that they could make some of that money back. 14 years later, this is also from the New York Times, by the way. This is what I thought was fascinating about this. This project in California was so bad that the right-wing extremist conservative news outlet, the New York Times, just kidding, decided to write a scorching piece on it. Again, from the not conservative New York Times. 14 years later, construction is now underway as a part of the 171-mile starter line connecting a few cities in the middle of California, which has been promised for 2030, but few expect it to make that goal. Trying to think if I could just summarize this. The bottom line here seems to be the cost has continued to escalate. When California High-Speed Rail Authority issued its new 2022 draft business plan in February, it wasn't $33 billion to build this train anymore. It seemed to be that the ultimate cost could be as high as $105 billion. Then less than 3 months later, the final plan was raised to an estimate of $113 billion freaking dollars. The rail authority says it has accelerated the pace of the construction on the starter system, but at the current spending rate of $1.8 million a day, according to the projections widely being used by engineers and project managers, the train could not be completed in this century. Dang. Okay, so bottom line here is when the government promises something like a bullet train that could get you to from Los Angeles to San Francisco in 90 minutes, guess what? They probably can't. So there's that. This I thought was freaking fascinating also. The company that was hired to build the bullet train in California got so fed up with dealing with the people from California, they decided to leave. Even with all of that money slushing around, the company that was in charge of building and engineering a big chunk of the train decided to go somewhere else. Where did they decide to go? SNCF was very angry. They told the state they were leaving for North Africa, which was less politically dysfunctional. They went to Morocco and helped them build their rail system. This company, instead of dealing with the bureaucrats in California, went to Morocco to work because their government in Morocco, in a North African country, was less dysfunctional than California. Morocco's bullet train started its services in 2018. That hurts. Like, it hurts me physically. Now, here's the thing that I thought was fascinating about this. A couple years ago, actually 2 years ago, Gavin Newsom, was giving, I believe this was his State of the State address, in which he also agreed that the bullet train is crazy overpriced and very, very poorly mismanaged, and said this. Look at this from Gavin Newsom of California. Watch this. Maybe some responsibility. Check it out.
And there's no doubt that our state's economy and quality of life depend on improving transportation. But let's be real. The current project, as planned, would cost too much and respectfully take too long. There's been too little oversight and not enough transparency. Right now, there simply isn't a path to get from Sacramento to San Diego, let alone from San Francisco to LA. I wish there were.
Dang. When Gavin Newsom is saying that this is too expensive, it's taking too long, and it's just not possible, you got a problem. Now, since the governor of California said that, none of this is workable, the train project has since been halted. Just kidding, it's still going. The California High-Speed Rail Authority is continuing to spend, to my knowledge, $1.8 million a day of taxpayer money to not complete a train. So there's that. If you don't live in California, more power to you. But at the same time, if you do, this is what you have to deal with and put up with. That's going to do it for us today. There's a great story about Michigan, a Michigan school district with lots of protesters that we'll talk about tomorrow. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what time we'll be here tomorrow. Right after this, I'm hopping on a plane going to Austin, Texas. But my flight back from Austin lands here back in California, and I believe like 9 a.m. on Thursday morning, which means I might just push the show tomorrow back an hour to allot myself time to get back to here and I don't know, do it live as opposed to pre-recorded, because I think I'm going to be in the air tomorrow, Thursday morning back. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry that I'm pawning all of my travel plans off on you. But yeah, if you live in Austin, say hi to me tomorrow. We'll be on the, I should know this. The University of Texas at Austin campus, I believe. Charlie Kirk is doing an event. I will be there in attendance and doing some things of my own. So if you're in Austin and around that area, come say hi. Would love to meet you. If not, hopefully we'll see you in some part of the country wherever you are. If you haven't already, give me a call or follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type JOBOB on really any social media platform. Twitter, Getter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Am I forgetting one? Truth, Ibble. All of them, all of the social media platforms, you can find me. Just type in JOBOB. The Chiron on Facebook is wrong. JOBB should do it. Jobob, see you there. That'll do it for us. I got, 2 days left of pushing also the West Coast Regional Summit that I'll be speaking at in Newport Beach. If you live in the Orange County area or are a student that lives on the West Coast, would love to have you at the West Coast Regional Summit on Friday. I'll be speaking Friday night. Also, Benny Johnson's going to be there. Charlie Kirk's going to be there. I'm forgetting other people's names, but there's going to be a lot of great speakers there. So if you have the ability, would love to see you in Newport Beach on Friday. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you tomorrow. Same place, probably different time.